Hello, and welcome to the Skating Lesson Presents the Maggie Diaries. This video is the result of weeks of research that have come with several families of current and former MG Elite gymnasts. This video originally started as a response to a quote given by Maggie Haney in a press release about Riley McCusker that came after the gymnast filed a lawsuit against her former coach. I reached out to several parents to get their take on that quote, which is unusual given by an individual being sued for emotional, verbal, and mental abuse. I'm going to start by reading the press release, which I obtained from Maggie Haney's spokesperson, Lisa Mercurio. Before the Gymternet comes to me, please know that this is verbatim what the press release issued on November 13th, 2020 states. Olympic coach Maggie Haney emphatically denies allegations of former MG Elite gymnast Riley McCusker. November 13th, 2020, New Jersey. Maggie Haney, the sought-after coach who led Olympian Laurie Hernandez to 2 Olympic medals, gold and silver, learned yesterday that former MG Elite gymnast Riley McCusker has filed a lawsuit against her. The claim of assault, filed more than 6 months after McCusker left the MG Elite program and team, contends that Coach Haney forced her to work out on injuries, limited her diet, and encouraged ameremia, amongst other things, all charges which have not been proven by a neutral, unbiased fact finder. Haney unequivocally denies all of the allegations and is saddened by the McCusker family's machinations. The timing of the initiation of the suit is not surprising, as Haney and USA Gymnastics are expecting a decision shortly on her appeal of the unprecedented suspension previously imposed on her. According to sources inside the MG Elite gym and family, Jessica McCusker, the gymnast's mother, oversaw her gymnast daughter's diet and nutritional intake exclusively. The mother was a frequent presence in the gym, famously limiting her daughter's intake and regularly bragging about excluding sources of high energy like carbohydrates, and even forbidding the consumption of certain basic fats like salad dressing. The record in this newly filed case will reveal numerous exchanges between Haney and Riley's mother, encouraging her to feed her daughter more, substantially, for example, from Ms. Haney to Mrs. McCusker, "She's hungry, give the girl a hamburger." McCusker's claim against Ms. Haney on their face lack any credibility. At the outset of the USAG hearing against Coach Haney this past February, Riley, who was not a minor at the time, was physically at the gym waiting for Ms. Haney to return to coach her the same day. During that period, Haney reports that the gymnast would frequently express concern, saying, "I just don't know what my mother is doing. I don't know who she's talking to." In fact, Haney and her legal team were not given any notice of any potential claims concerning McCusker or testimony by her mother, Jessica, before the USAG panel. Furthermore, just 2 weeks prior to the surprise testimony against Haney, Jessica McCusker chose to have her daughter travel with Haney to national team training camp, an opportunity that Haney felt was unnecessary given Riley's foot pain at the time. According to Haney, the mother was 100% involved, aware, and managing any and all health and injury-related issues encountered by her daughter. The documentary record will show that Riley McCusker's mother was the one who urged her daughter to participate. Haney, who has not spoken out about any of her gymnasts until now, cannot imagine why any parent would want to bring this kind of additional public pressure to an athlete who has struggled with her performance issues while on the cusp of vying for an Olympic spot. Haney said, "I hope Jess knows what she's doing, because this situation isn't going to help calm Riley's nerves." I have to tell you that when I first read Haney's quote about McCusker, which is at the end of the press release and the part of the press release that so many outlets picked up upon the lawsuit being filed, I have to tell you that I was startled. On one hand, you could take the quote as face value, as Maggie's PR person put it to me, that Maggie's just is unsure why someone would do this now of all times. Of course, speaking to the other side, these parents claim that this lawsuit came now because they want to make sure that Haney cannot coach in the future. Speaking to Maggie's side, they allege that this is something along the lines of a money grab, which is you have to sue for damages in civil litigation. So that does make sense. There is a prevailing opinion that USA Gymnastics is perhaps using Haney as a scapegoat. And whether or not USAG's suspension of Haney is for legitimate and altruistic reasons, it does seem that there is evidence to substantiate some of these claims. And these two things do not have to be mutually exclusive. We can have these different thoughts. USAG can certainly have, perhaps untoward motives, but perhaps reasons for suspension are legitimate. And I think that we're going to get to that because when I looked at Haney's quote, I took into account what we know about Riley McCusker as a competitive gymnast. Here's a young 19-year-old athlete who has struggled with her nerves in competition, but since leaving that gym, we've seen her training and showing new clips on Instagram where she looks very strong. She has a new dismount on uneven bars. She's performing as strong as ever. Her tumbling looks even better than it has in recent years. And to me, I had to wonder if this was Haney trying to get under the skin and into the head of a former athlete. And that's why I reached out to parents and to see what they had to take upon this article. In the process, I spoke with Maggie Haney's PR person, Lisa Mercurio, and agreed to speak with many current families of MG Elite. And at that point in time, Lisa was on a time schedule of thinking that we could get this done by November 30th, as she referenced in an email. Of course, I then asked to speak to specific families, thinking that this is someone who might coach certain individuals. Once I gave specific families who I wanted to speak to, that seemed to catch Mercurio off guard and communication ceased. So then when I woke up on November 30th and saw an article in the New York Times by Juliet McCurr about Maggie Haney, the references to November 30th all of a sudden made so much sense. And here I'm going to really read to you the article by Juliet McCurr interviewing Maggie Haney as it appeared in the New York Times. A gymnastics coach accused of emotional abuse speaks out. In her first public remarks since being suspended from the sport for 8 years, Maggie Haney disputed accusations that led to her punishment, but she said she could now see flaws in the way she treated some young athletes. Juliet McCurr, November 30th, 2020, The New York Times. If she could travel back in time before she was suspended for gymnastics after being accused of berating and mistreating her athletes, including an Olympic champion, Maggie Haney says she would change the way she coached. She wouldn't push some of her young gymnasts to redo a routine again and again after even the tiniest mistakes. To demand their focus, she wouldn't yell at them. Instead, she would learn to let some imperfections slide. I think my mistakes were that I cared too much and wanted them to be a little too perfect every day, when maybe that's not possible. Haney, one of the most prominent coaches in the sport, said this month in an interview with the New York Times, the first time she has spoken publicly in nearly a year. Maybe what used to be okay is not okay anymore, and maybe it shouldn't be. I think maybe the culture has shifted. Haney has not coached at her gym in central New Jersey or anywhere since February, she said, when USA Gymnastics, the sport's national federation, temporarily suspended her before later barring her from coaching for 8 years for what it called her severe aggressive behavior toward her athletes. She said she hasn't even coached her own daughter, who is 11. The athletes who have trained under Haney include Laurie Hernandez, who won a silver medal on balance beam at the 2016 Olympics and helped the United States win the team gold medal. Hernandez's complaint to the federation was one of nearly a dozen that led to Haney's ban, which she is appealing to an arbitrator. It was considered the harshest penalty for emotional and verbal abuse in the sport's recent history. The suspension was also viewed as a warning that coaches could now face stiff penalties for the mental and non-sexual abuse that was long accepted in the sport before the Lawrence G. Nasser sexual abuse scandal shed light on the toxic culture in gymnastics. Nasser was the longtime United States national team doctor who in 2018 was sentenced to prison for molesting more than 200 girls and women under the guise of medical treatment. Haney said the accusations against her, particularly those from Hernandez, whom she coached from age 6, had come out of nowhere, and she vehemently denied them. More than 30 gymnasts at MG Elite, Haney's gym in Morganville, New Jersey, and their families continue to support her and are awaiting her return to the sport, she said. shall have voiced their support for Haney in a YouTube video compiled by the public relations firm she hired to help restore her reputation. Haney, 42, said she was convinced that USA Gymnastics had used her as a scapegoat after its missteps in the Nasser case, in which the organization failed to protect its gymnasts from a sexual predator. The federation needed to do something bold, something dramatic, she said, to prove to the public that it cares about its athletes. I've dedicated my whole life to this, Haney said, her voice beginning to waver. To be out of the gym has been really hard. I feel like it was unfairly taken away from me. Haney's accusers have not wavered. They say the ban is warranted, and some even wanted a permanent one. They claim that she bullied her gymnasts, publicly shamed them about their weight, encouraged eating disorders, and forced them to train with injuries. Hernandez, who is now training in California for the Tokyo Olympics next summer, told the Times in April that Haney's treatment of her was just so twisted that I thought it couldn't be real. She said the abuse included Haney calling her weak, lazy, and messed up in the head, and that the emotional abuse led to a continuing battle with depression. Riley McCusker, who has a good chance of making the United States team for the Tokyo Games, filed a lawsuit against Haney last month. Among the accusations in the complaint was that Haney had forced McCusker to train through injuries, including while she had a painful, potentially serious medical condition called rhabdomyolysis, which is a breakdown of muscle tissue that can happen from overexertion. In a separate lawsuit filed last month, another gymnast, Emily Lazewski, a sophomore at the University of Pittsburgh, accused Haney and an assistant coach of forcing her to perform an advanced skill on the uneven bars at the Arena Gym, a gym not far from MG Elite, and that it led her to fall and hit her head. Lazewski was unconscious for 3 days with multiple skull fractures and had seizures because of the injury, the lawsuit said. The suit also claimed that Haney once picked Lazewski up from the floor by her hair after the gymnast had fallen. These situations are not at all the way I recall them, Haney said, adding that Hernandez's mother and McCusker's mother were often in the gym, sometimes on the training floor, but never expressed displeasure over her demanding coaching style. Neither mother responded to a request made through a representative to comment for this article. Haney said, I just think when money gets involved, people will say and do different things. I think a lot of this is about money. The arbitrator's ruling on Haney's appeal is expected in the coming days, said one of her lawyers, Stephen Altman. He said he hoped that Haney's suspension would be rescinded because USA Gymnastics' hearing for the case had been biased and flawed, and as a practical matter, a kangaroo court. 7 of Haney's accusers were not even coached by her, Altman said, and the gym offered a fun environment amid the intense training that is generally needed to master the sport's daring moves. When they were doing gymnastics, it was serious, Altman said. They worked on life-threatening skills for hours a day. USA Gymnastics, in an emailed statement, said on Sunday that Haney's hearing was both fair and impartial and adhered to the requirements of the organization's procedures, as well as the law that oversees Olympic sports in the United States. Haney conceded that she could be intense in the gym, but she said that most of the time everybody is smiling and laughing and music is playing. She carefully crafted the atmosphere at the gym, she said, knowing that parents had entrusted her with their children, at times from morning until evening. The program, Haney said, included closely monitored online learning, a certified teacher holding classes during the day, and an emphasis on safety. As a young gymnast herself, training in an elite program for a while, Haney worked with harsh coaches who screamed at the girls, she recalled, and had them step onto a scale daily, then listed everyone's weight on a bulletin board at the gym. To make sure girls lose weight, the coaches forced them to wear rubber suits or 20-pound belts and jog around the gym, she said. It didn't faze me and didn't bother me, but that kid next to me, it could have really bothered and scared them, she said, adding that she never weighed her gymnasts or forced them to lose weight. I think what I've learned over the last year is that so much of this comes down to perspective. Every person, every athlete, every coach, they have their own perspective of things. Some of the families whose children continue to train at MG Elite were drawn to her gym because of what they described as an exacting nature. Henry Rivera, an engineer at a software company, moved his 12-year-old daughter to MG Elite last year so she could train with Haney. He said she had left her previous gym because her routines were getting sloppy and the coach there was pushing her to perform skills she didn't feel prepared to do. Rivera said he appreciated that Haney made the gym a safe space for his daughter, yet never babied her. If I wanted her to come home happy and smiling every day, I'd send her to clown school. I'm serious, Rivera said, If my daughter has goals and her goal is to be an elite athlete, I need a coach to teach them the right things and safely, and to push them. Rivera said if Haney was ever abusive to his daughter, he would have noticed because he monitors what she is going through emotionally, mentally, and physically, considering it his job as a parent. As parents, we need to be vigilant, he said, and if you don't like it, get up and leave. In a telephone interview with her parents standing by, his daughter Hesley said Haney just wanted her gymnasts to be the best, and was tough on them, but not like to the point where it was horrible. She said that she was sad to see Haney go, and that she missed her. She never crossed the line, she said. Another parent at the gym, Charisse Dash, is a sport agent who recruits athletes from the Dominican Republic to play in Major League Baseball. Her 10-year-old daughter has worked with Haney since she was 6. You're not there to play. You're there to work, Dash said, describing that type of gymnastics as a 9-to-5 job. She added, do I classify the rigor of the training as abuse? I think you really need to have to see it on a case-by-case basis. Dash said she and her husband ran a very tight ship at home with their 5 children, where screaming, not coddling, was common. So to them, Haney's demanding style was a great fit. I don't think it's fair to say that Maggie is an abuser by all means, Dash said. It depends on how much any child or any parent can tolerate. Haney's USA Gymnastics hearing in February and March was held by telephone, and Haney listened to weeks of it while huddled in a closet so her 2 children would not interrupt her. About a half-dozen parents testified in support of her, but not all of the parents who wanted to testify were given the chance to, she said. Even when Haney herself testified, she said, she felt that her side of the story didn't matter. She was sure the 3-person hearing panel had already made up its mind. Some of the gymnasts who accused her of abuse, she said, had been asked to leave the gym because they could not physically keep up. The part she remembers as the worst, though, was sitting through Hernandez's live testimony. Haney considered their relationship strong, so it was inconceivable to her that Hernandez felt mistreated. Hernandez often slept at Haney's house and was considered a part of the family. Note, that's now a safe sport rule. You can't do that. Back to the article. Haney said, Haney took Hernandez to the beach, to restaurants, to get her nails done, and gave her a tuition break at the gym. When she and Hernandez returned to the 2016 Olympics, Haney said, she helped organize a parade in her town in Hernandez's honor. When Hernandez was competing on the television show Dancing with the Stars soon after the Rio Games, Haney said, she spoke to her one night for 3 hours. The coach remembered their talking like old friends about makeup and music and how Haney, with her perfectionist eye, noticed that Hernandez's foot had slipped during an earlier dance, but that she had covered the mistake well. Haney recalled telling Hernandez to enjoy her break from gymnastics. You're a star now, Haney said she told her. Within days, Laurie Hernandez's mother Wanda called Haney to say that they were cutting all ties. Though Wanda Hernandez told the Times in April that she had severed their relationship after learning that Haney had mistreated her daughter, Haney said she was blindsided by the move and thinks it was financially motivated because the Fernandezes first offered her a cut of Laurie's income after the Olympics, but then did not follow through. For me, it was never about money, Haney said. I just remember being so confused and not understanding any of it. Neither Wanda nor Laurie Hernandez responded to interview requests made through Laurie's agent, Cheryl Shade. The situation left Haney wondering what she had done wrong. She said she had been protective of her gymnasts, even when it came to food, as she watched other coaches at meets hover over the meal table to control their athletes' consumption. My kids were never the ones stuffing bread into their pockets, she said, describing how some athletes felt compelled to sneak food back to their rooms. She said she encouraged her gymnasts to make smart choices, though McCusker's lawsuit said Haney promoted unhealthy eating and weight loss habits. Haney acknowledged that there had recently been a change in how some gymnasts expected to be treated by their coaches, especially since this summer, when hundreds of them, endured worldwide, began speaking out about the abuse they endured from tyrannical coaches. Many coaches, Haney said, now don't know when they might cross the line or upset an especially sensitive child or parent, so they are just letting the girls do whatever because they don't want to get in trouble. The culture has shifted perhaps too far, she said, and she expects the sport going forward to be filled with underachievers. She said she thinks coaches will not push their athletes as hard. Haney blames parents for that. They've become too invested in their daughter's success, she said, and now are emboldened to lash out at anyone and potentially crush anyone who stands in their daughter's way. I feel that somebody needs to stand up for coaches, Haney said. If I don't stand up and fight for the truth, then other coaches aren't going to either. I know if this can happen to me, I think it can happen to anyone. In this video, I'm going to try to explore why Maggie Haney has been suspended and not others. Is Maggie just being scapegoated by USA Gymnastics? What about Mary Lee Tracy, Al Fong, Kim Zmeskal? Is Maggie Haney the scapegoat or the first of many? I'll let you decide for yourselves. Or is there something specific about Maggie? Many MG Elite parents describe Maggie Haney as having a specific personality type. The jury is out on Vicky Levine, her assistant, or Mini Maggie, as parents and former gymnasts have described her. Vicky Levine was not a high-level gymnast, and though her mother owned Monmouth Gymnastics, where Maggie rents gym space, it is Haney who taught her how to coach. Danny Dahlia is a former gymnast from Rutgers. One mother alleges that her daughter dreamed of going to Rutgers before Maggie told the daughter that it was a shitty school for gymnastics. But Danny's gymnastics is indeed on YouTube, and she did wear a Rutgers leotard. It doesn't appear to be up to Maggie's standards, but she is a CrossFit coach and seems like a gritty girl. She now wears the signature stretch pants and makeup with Maggie and Vicky, and she seems to have adopted their personality. This is a gym where one group of young gymnasts is referred to as the retard group. This is the group that does not homeschool. I'll leave the irony of that up to the listener. Maggie Haney is not one to be embarrassed by her gymnasts. The videos of her looking annoyed during routines exist all over YouTube. Parents say that if you mess up at a meet, Maggie Haney turns her back to you and doesn't acknowledge you. Girls typically do worse after this treatment. Not reaching expectations is also an embarrassment. Many parents recounted a story of being in the lobby for pickup while Maggie Haney told Mary Jo Greaves how embarrassing it was to have to be in the gym that week because they were supposed to be at Junior Worlds. It was fucking embarrassing, but Olivia just couldn't get her shit done at camp. Olivia Greaves was present for this exchange. Haney reportedly did not care. It is a gym that parents describe as breeding mean girls. There was bullying of Laurie Hernandez on social media that was rampant after she left the gym. This practice has trickled down at the lowest levels. Parents describe it as young girls who, when someone leaves, it's not uncommon for those still in the gym to comment on their social media that they will never be good again or do the skills they once did. When several recent elites left MG last winter, they deleted all posts on their social media accounts to avoid this behavior. Their accounts remain barren. Maggie and Vicky are known to yell across the gym to one another about how much their gymnasts are embarrassing them. The swearing at gymnasts starts at a young age. One 8-year-old said that the F word was Danny's favorite. Because the team is small in number, it isn't a situation where the coaching gets tougher over time. It begins early on, and there is always a whipping post. The young girls see how the older girls are treated, and there isn't much of a difference. Threats in the gym are common. It isn't unusual for Maggie to say something like, "All I have to do is call your college and they won't want you anymore." Parents say she always kept the girls in fear of her. When girls left the gym, most left the sport. She would make sure they would be ruined one way or another. During one banquet, Maggie Haney reportedly informed parents that it would be one coach's last day. She had reportedly only allowed that coach to know that earlier that day. During one speech, Haney made fun of 2 girls for crying in the gym every day. In another speech, she mentioned how when one gymnast arrived, she was so embarrassed because NCAA coaches were coming for recruiting and no one would want her. That gymnast is now signed with a school that has won multiple national titles. When one gymnast tore her ACL, Maggie's initial response to her was to not get fat because then her college would no longer want her. She coupled that with she might as well get her other knee repaired, because that one would eventually get injured as well. One gymnast had a Hydro Flask metal water bottle thrown at her on beam by coach Kirsten Sokolowski for not straightening her legs. After a major hip injury, Maggie told that mother her daughter just wasn't pretty anymore. She was 9. There is footage of the water bottle incident that was subpoenaed by Mark Busby during the hearing. Parents will also indicate that Maggie Haney is someone who has no breaks, no limits, and follows no rules. I thought that this exchange was telling during an email to parents during quarantine. At the end of an email, it said, "Please share this message with the girls. Hi, girls. We just wanted to reach out to say hi to all of you. It's so strange not to see each of you every day. We really miss you guys. This is such a crazy time, but we hope everyone is staying safe and realizing how much they love and miss gymnastics and MG Elite. It's nice to see all the faces on the Zoom workouts working hard. Hopefully everyone is enjoying that. Please keep working very hard, and remember, you can always do more than asked. Stretch more, condition more, ride your bike more, jog more, etc. We are hoping this lockdown will end soon and we can get back in the gym with all of you. Please enjoy the gymnastics break and be ready to work super hard when we get back. We miss you all and can't wait to see you soon. XOXO, your MG Elite coaches." Many gymnasts in the gym have recounted being ridiculed, shunned, and told they were weak on a daily basis. Those who left were even far worse. Emily Lazuski is one of the recent gymnasts who has sued Maggie Haney. She was a talented gymnast who was coming back from an injury when she was afraid to perform a transition on uneven bars. When coaches refused to spot her, she wound up slamming her head into concrete, leaving her unconscious for several days. She eventually had last rites given to her. Her lawsuit alleges the coaches originally mocked her. Parents of gymnasts on the team at the time alleged the cause of injury was initially downplayed. When Lazuski signed her letter of intent to compete for Pittsburgh, parents allege Haney mocked her for signing at a 53rd ranked school as opposed to a top 10 school she could have gotten her a scholarship for. This stuck out to me because you would think that if a gymnast almost died at your gym, there'd be some gymnasts you wouldn't touch. But on the day that Lazuski signed with Pittsburgh, Haney did make fun of her to other prospective parents in the gym. Haney's own daughter is reportedly treated so poorly by her mother that she has developed several nervous tics of her own. Parents. Months ago, I released a video where I read the rules of MG Elite with the tone I inferred from the pages in Haney's former interviews. Upon releasing that video, I was contacted by numerous families who had left and were in the process of leaving the gym. I am now in the receipt of numerous email and text message exchanges between parents and the coaches. Many parents admit that they do have a degree of culpability. Many parents admit that they were reluctant to contact the coaches, as the coaches would often read the text messages and emails they received from parents to the girls and make fun of the girls and their parents in front of the entire team. In one case, a former gymnast alleges that Haney informed her that it would be better for the gymnast's father if he just divorced her mother. The gymnast was 9. The following letter comes from a gymnast who left the gym and reluctantly decided to return, feeling her gymnastics had suffered. The gymnast sent me the letter upon the condition that the names be changed. Some of the language appears in other parent emails about joining the gym, but Haney added plenty additional comments for good measure. The gymnast handed the email and a Word doc of her time at the gym over to lawyers before the hearing. She wanted her story to be shared, but the idea of seeing Haney's cold, icy eyes was too much for her. She hopes the coach knows who she is. Thursday, May 2nd, 2013. Hi, Paul and Sue. I want you both to know that I think Amanda is a great kid, and that is why I am willing to give this another chance. I truly want what is best for her. However, things will have to be completely different this time around. If you are both willing to agree to the below guidelines, then we can move forward. Sue will not come inside Monmouth Gymnastics or Galaxy Gymnastics. No exceptions. Amanda can be dropped off and picked up in the parking lot. All parental communication will be between Maggie, Vicky, and Paul. Amanda is expected to attend practice daily, even if injured. There are always things we can accomplish in the gym, regardless of injury, and I will expect Amanda to be at practice. Doctor appointments should be made outside of gym time, 99% of the time. I realize there may be some times, very rarely, when this is impossible. Amanda will join the homeschool program, details below. The monthly teacher's fee, $125, paid directly to Carly Haney, check or cash due by the 15th of each month. We do not prorate teachers' fees for any reason. There will be no interference with my decisions regarding Amanda's gymnastics. I will decide her level, routines, schedules, training group, end times, and all plans. Notes. Please understand that I'm away more now than ever. My commitment is always to the highest level gymnast. I currently have one gymnast attending national team camp and another attending developmental camp. I will be traveling more as these two elite gymnasts progress. There will be several times when Vicky coaches the entire team alone. There will be several schedule changes that need to be followed. Just this year, I was unable to attend Level 8 regionals, Level 8 sectionals, and now Level 10 nationals. Plus, I almost missed Level 10 states. Vicky will be my replacement while I am away. She is beyond capable of filling in for me. You have to trust that Vicky will handle everything perfectly. I have never in 3 years had any issue with the way she handled a kid, parent, situation, etc. I support Vicky 1000%. If you are not comfortable leaving Amanda in her hands, this is simply not the place for you. All rules still apply while I am away at camps, monthly, competitions, etc. This is the second and final chance. I have no drama on my team now, and it will not start again. There will be no warnings, strikes, or explanations. If I see, hear, or even sense that drama is starting to happen, Amanda will have to leave the team once and for all. I do not need to hear your side of the story. I simply do not care. These rules must be followed. If there is a problem, I expect that Paul will come to me. Do not involve other parents in your situations or have other parents do your dirty work. Vicky and I will give Amanda our best effort in the gym. Please know that I truly care about Amanda. However, my team was fine without her and will be fine again if this does not work. The ball is in your court, as I am willing to give her another chance. If you can both agree to these strict, yes harsh, guidelines, then I welcome Amanda back to my team. If not, I completely understand and I wish her the best. Thanks, Maggie. Well, this email was written in May. The gymnast parents did agree to it. By September, a back fracture that the gymnast had broke all the way through, and she was left with a severe spinal surgery that left her career never the same. In one text message exchange that I post on social media, Maggie informed a mother that the gym has never had a back injury since her daughter's. Other more recent parents have refuted that and state there were recently 4 gymnasts with broken backs at the same time. One gymnast in recent years had a back fracture from overuse that was dislocated bilateral stress fracture in her back. She had yet to reach level 5. One mother emailed me a story of her daughter's injury. We'll call the daughter Amber. One July 31st, I walked into practice for a pickup. I was taking 2 girls to New York City to see the Hunger Games exhibit. Amber wasn't coming off the floor. She was sitting looking up at Vicky. Vicky opened up the glass door at the foyer to the floor and said that Amber had hit her mouth trying to do a pack. I asked her if she was bleeding or there was any damage to her teeth. Vicky said no. Then, when Amber came to me, she looked funny. She couldn't close her mouth. I asked her to try to bite down, but she could not close her jaw. Very calmly, I asked Vicky, what is normal protocol? Do I see a dentist or a doctor? Do I go to the ER for this? I had never seen it before. Maggie came running across the floor, shrieking at me. You do nothing. You take her home or to the city or wherever you were going. You parents make me sick. You take your anxiety and you transfer it into your kids. They watch you and they become worried like you. Just act like it's fine and it'll be fine. But Maggie, she can't close her mouth. So what? Wait a few days. If she still can't close it, then you worry. Then the floodgates opened and Dayton was sitting on the floor playing. When David comes home and kisses me, I vomit into my own mouth. But do I let Dayton see that? No. I smile sweetly and I slip him some tongue. You are a worse worrier than Rachel's mom. The counselor that Rachel was using in Texas over the internet tried to help her with anxiety and fear. When I talked to that counselor, he said the mom is the bigger problem, even a bigger problem than the kid. And she waved her arm and she stormed off. I explained to Vicky that I have a history of migraines and TMJ syndrome. I was dumbfounded, mumbled that I didn't even know Rachel's mom, and left. So we got into the car, and I freaking gave her 2 Advil and took her into the city. In a couple of days, the swelling subsided. I began to ask questions of Amber. Rachel hadn't even been around the gym. Amber didn't know what happened. I think Maggie blamed herself for pushing Rachel too hard. She took a level 6 and made her a level 8 and then taught her a more complicated vault, and then it was all too much too fast. In the meantime, it was Amber's first pack after her first back injury release. They took the pad off. She asked to do just one with the mat. No! She begged for a spot. No! So, Amber had a crooked bite. Yes, we got braces. I think all is fine. I hope. And Rachel turned up around the corner at another gym, just working on equipment alone with a coach, working through her fears at first. And Maggie and Vicky made such fun of her for going there and getting fat. One mother recounted her daughter's story. We'll call this daughter Sophie. Sophie got hurt doing giants for the first time without a spot. She scorpioned her back, but the coaches told me Sophie is fine. She cried, and she never cries, but she's fine. And then Sophie kept practicing all week. She would cry and say it hurt, but she didn't really tell the mom. She couldn't get out of bed. It turns out she had a spinal fracture. Parents said that many injuries were caused by refusing to spot skills, just as Emily Lazuski's was. Sophie wound up being out of the gym for 3 months, but they have to go to the gym every day. But the gym doesn't exactly follow doctors' orders. And this mother said that her daughter was a rule follower. If the doctor says don't do it, she won't do it. But the coaches were awful to her when she wouldn't do what the coaches wanted to push her to do. See, Maggie sees rest as doing less. She doesn't understand the concept of actually not doing gymnastics. And this is when she says to girls, if you don't do this, you're never going to get caught up. You weren't very good to begin with. She said that this sort of brainwashing happened to her daughter at 10 years old. The doctor gave them very specific instructions to ramp up. The coaches wouldn't follow it. When she wasn't allowed to do something, the coaches would ostracize and ignore her. Everyone else in the gym would as well. Upon returning to the gym, Sophie had a fear of vaulting. Other parents recall that she kept hitting the hard vault because she was afraid, and she kept landing on her back on the hard vault table again and again. Sophie wasn't ready to compete for the first meet. She and her mom went to watch the meet anyway. They brought gifts for the girls. The girls took the gifts and then walked away and wouldn't look at her for the entire meet because Maggie and Vicky were there because they had older gymnasts competing at the meet. She was coached by Danny and Kirsten at the time. This was January. Danny would scream, "Make the fucking correction and stop wasting my time." It was a constant barrage of you're going to be weak and you are never going to be good again. Many parents have a lot of thoughts on the Rhabdo diagnosis by Riley McCusker. Several say that the timeline in her actual affidavit isn't quite correct. They all say that it is a result of Maggie pressuring her to do more, constantly. They say Maggie just doesn't understand rest. The other parents have described McCusker as a pleaser who may have been coerced into doing more than the doctor ordered and then later freaking out. Parents allege that this is a common practice at MG Elite. In one email from May 2015, a mother of a girl we will call Brittany learned that her daughter's initial back injury was a stress reaction. It was days after she won level 8 regionals. The original MRI ordering doctor had suffered an untimely heart attack, so they had to take her scans and reports to another doctor for diagnosis. This is the mother writing to Vicky, and she said, "So as I told you, the doctor said that the pedicles are weakened, and if she lays off totally for 6 weeks, the bone should strengthen to make it no longer a concern. He did say that we were lucky to have them resting for the last 4 weeks, and that they have been testing her back again and again by this training, and it hasn't broken under the stress. But he did get very angry when I challenged about doing nothing for 6 weeks, at which point he wrote out a script that says 6 weeks of static core exercises, which he said meant like planks. Then he said mean stuff in front of my daughter, like, "Sweetheart, someday you'll have babies of your own and need to hold them without your back hurting." And he said to me that as a parent, I had choices. And if the gym doesn't agree with his script, then we aren't at the right gym because they don't care if they break her spine. He spun and walked out of the room. He tossed her file at some girl and said to get an appointment for 6 weeks. Vicky Levine responded to this email on May 12th, 2015. That is good timing now for vacation. It will make the time seem shorter. Maggie said Dr. Sun can order a script for a new MRI in 2 weeks. That is not cool, he said all those things in front of Brittany. Ugh, I wish we would have got her to see Laurie's doctor or someone we know better. I think that in 2 weeks, we should see a difference on the MRI or the X-ray. She will still be in the gym doing as much as she can. I'm writing out things for her to do now. Not doing second practices is not a problem. There's only so much she can do anyways. Thanks. Just keep telling her it's no big deal. 2 elite gymnasts both have that same thing, stress reaction, and one has been off her foot for 2 weeks already. She'll be back way before 6. So just downplay it to her. That doctor sounds like an ass. Why they stay. One question many ask is why parents allow their kids to stay under the tutelage of Maggie Haney and Vicky Levine if they know it's bad. The answer is complicated. Every parent I spoke to admitted to knowing that MG Elite is a stressful and unhealthy environment. Many recounted walking up to the gym doors some nights and hearing Haney and Levine screaming from the parking lot. Several described a process of feeling brainwashed like a cult member, then voiceless, ultimately awakened, then alarmed, a feeling of being trapped, terrified, and then a process of secretly and actively plotting an escape. We'll get to the escape later. One mother put it, "It's hard to explain. These girls were infamous and feared and disliked by most other gyms, clearly because they always won. Yet they were always the most modest girls because they were always told they weren't good enough and could do much better. Such a mindfuck at 9, 10, and 11. I remember once running out of Michael's arts and crafts store because some girls recognized my daughter and said, 'You are that girl from MG.' And then they were all pointing and whispering. My daughter ran out to the car. The girls really truly only had each other. It was like living in a commune. The bond in the trenches among the girls was hard to overcome for some parents who considered leaving. As one parent put it, when my daughter got there, she was 9 years old. We got there and the coaches treated her like garbage from the very beginning. I didn't realize just how bad it was, obviously. I thought it was just, we were at MG Elite. She's hard. She's not nice. She's not easy. I mean, my daughter was training with Dayton, so we were definitely coached by Maggie from the beginning, even though she claims in the video that many of these girls weren't coached by her. I really didn't know everything, but my daughter cried every day for like a month. We got there in the summer, and then by the fall, she didn't want to go to the gym anymore. She was starting to cry like every day, and she was always the kid who never wanted to be sick. She didn't want a day off. She was the kid where if they were going to give you tomorrow off, she'd be pissed. She didn't want a day off. It was the first time since she was 4 that she didn't want to go to the gym. She was telling me, "She's so mean. It's so hard. I can't do it. I can't do it." Whatever. I had her going to a psychologist because where else are we going to go? I don't know what else to do anymore. You feel like you're trapped and that there is nowhere better. She had already been to other gyms and they were horrible too, so we didn't know what to do. I come to find out now that Maggie had been calling her a retard for months. And Maggie, Vicky, and Danny would all think that it was hilarious and call my kid a retard. I didn't know that until we left. So yes, she was going to a sports therapist, and then she seemed to kind of get over it. She got a new floor routine, she started making the corrections that Maggie wanted, and it started clicking, and she got really close to all the girls. And she wasn't upset anymore. She got over that hump. So it was all right. She's okay. And then she started competing, and she was winning, and she loved it. She was getting these crazy scores. And then we had an incident where my daughter went to a meet and a trophy broke, and all my daughter wanted in life was this special trophy the meet has. I called the gym to ask if there was any way to replace it. Maggie called me in the car screaming that we embarrassed her and that she was considering kicking us out and would need to reevaluate if we belonged to the team at the end of the season. She said that my kid was not the problem, that I was the problem. That was enough to kick her out. So I spent the entire rest of the season petrified that she was going to throw my daughter out of the gym. And where are we going to go? What are we going to do? My daughter is now best friends with the girls on the team. Maggie eventually got over it. The season ended, nothing happened. Then, she had her moments. Maggie didn't coach them for the next level, and it was definitely a lot better. But Danny is another mini Maggie. She is no better. She buys into all of it. She coaches just the way Maggie did. She doesn't believe them when they are hurting. They talk shit about all the parents to the girls. Vicky is a piece of shit. Danny is a piece of shit. Maggie is a piece of shit. Kirsten was wonderful in the beginning, and then after 6 months coaching, she became a piece of shit. And then she couldn't take it anymore, and she left, even though they said that they fired her. She was wonderful, and they made her into a psycho, because that is how they wanted her to be. They wanted them to treat our kids like shit. My daughter was just a level gymnast. They used to send our girls off to the cheer gym because there wasn't enough room in the main gym for them to do floor. We were the schmucks. Vicky was not going to go to the other gym. So we went off to the other gym. So they're tumbling on a cheer floor. Now, this is not a gym floor. This is not a regular floor. This is a fucking cheer floor where people typically wear sneakers on. So every time they went there, they were in pain. Their ankles hurt, their knees hurt, their heels hurt. One of the level 6 girls broke her foot. She tumbled, fell, clearly was in pain, and Danny screamed over to her, "Well, is it broken?" And how would she know? The kid trained for 4 hours on a broken foot. No one called the mom to say she is hurt. Nothing. The next day, the mom took her to urgent care, and it was broken, and she had to tell them. To be fair, many do eventually leave MG Elite, but not always on their own, and not always remaining in the sport. I spoke to one former gymnast who did leave, and she admitted that her gymnastics regressed without the MG coaches. Other gyms don't have the same ratio of coaches to girls. Other gyms aren't spending the sessions going over the fine details in the same way, and the results in training do slip. That gymnast returned, but she was injured within months with a major surgery. None of the parents debated that Maggie is a good technical coach. In fact, Maggie has a history of communicating to parents just how good she is. Listen to Maggie as she describes how much she improved each gymnast.
When Jasmyn first came to the gym, I was excited she came, but then I saw her do gymnastics and I started to panic a little bit. She called and said she wanted to train, try to be elite. Okay, we'll see. I remember the first day she came, she did a back handspring on beam and she slipped and slid down the beam. Her legs were tucked like crazy, and I was just thinking oh, I hope I did not make a mistake, I said, well, let me see her layout on vault, and she didn't have a layout on vault. We do the elite conditioning pretty much every day. She wasn't able to do a press handstand. So I was a little bit nervous at first, but she just kept working in the gym and she was trying so hard. So I was like, you know what, I'll give her a chance, we'll see what happens, and I'll put her out there.
I started gymnastics at around 5, 6 years old. Carly told Maggie, oh, I have this little kid, she can go in your level 3 team, and Maggie was like, no way.
I didn't know there was anything really special about her at that time, she was just in my group. Floor routine for her, I looked at her, I said, sure, I did her floor routine, and I was like, I don't get what the big deal is about this kid, her feet are bad, and she has no flexibility, and her shoulders are up in her ears, and he's like, no, trust me, this kid is good, why don't you let her come work out with you?
Bruce thought that I'd be better off with Maggie because it's a different program, there's homeschool.
First thing I did is I just took her all the way back to the basics. I started stretching her a lot. We did a ton of handstands against the wall. Once I got her basics fixed, I started pushing her on skills. And I started a Yurchenko double full with her in May of this year. Now, as you can see, she got second place on vault at US Classic. So I think we're doing something right. And then a nice finish. Just spaz out and go to lunge. Just hold and go. Do you feel it? Just hyper? Yeah. I guess Laurie's floor routine has become a big hit, which is pretty cool. I think the thing that separates her on floor is her leaps and jumps and her dance. She shows pretty nice flexibility on her leaps and jumps because I've been stretching her from the time she was 5 years old. And then as far as her dance, I don't stop correcting her dance. We're constantly fixing it, correcting it, changing it. Making sure her eyes are looking the right way, when she's supposed to do these eyes or when she's supposed to put a smile on her face and where she flicks her fingers, stuff like that. And I guess it's paying off because I'm getting a lot of good feedback on her floor routine. So that's good.
But see, it isn't easy to be accepted by Maggie Haney. Many gymnasts are turned down readily. Those who make it to try out can be denied for all sorts of reasons. Some are looks related, some are body related, some are talent related. See, Maggie is decidedly not a fan of Simone Biles or that style of gymnastics, according to many parents. One parent described to me that Maggie liked one of her daughters and reluctantly agreed to take the other, despite telling the mother that her other daughter had fat legs. Other girls were so bad that the coaches sent around videos of them making fun of them to the other parents. And those are the ones they let try out. Those who were asked to try out and didn't, well. And it isn't as often that Maggie does such favors. Riley McCusker and Olivia Greaves both have sisters who were gymnasts. Neither was deemed MG elite material. Typically, in skating, when Frank Carroll gets his hands on Gracie Gold or Michelle Kwan, he takes their less talented sibling for good measure. Not Maggie. Some parents have to drive their kids to 2 different gyms. Imagine explaining that to your children. After parents are accepted and their gymnasts are accepted, there is often a period where things will go south. Parents describe a reverse honeymoon, if you will. It doesn't necessarily happen immediately after the grueling workouts. It can start when their bodies inevitably start breaking down. The coaches are quick to communicate to parents that the only reason their daughter is any good is because of them. Maggie made it very clear that my daughter was only an average talent getting above average training. It's all about the training. We just weren't very good without her. And the higher you go, the harder it is to find another gym that isn't abusive, that has a coach who is on a technical par. For the elites, finding a gym with a coach who doesn't have a direct competitor is also challenging. Many have gone to First State in Delaware and speak positively about Slava, but they rent apartments in town. It isn't cheap or easy to split up families. Riley and Olivia couldn't just go to that gym because Slava and Morgan Hurd have been a team for several years, and their strengths and Morgan's can result in direct conflict with the Olympics on the horizon. So that just wasn't going to work. The tension between Team McCusker and Team Greaves was becoming palpable in the MG Elite gym. There was a period where McCusker was injured and didn't perform well in Great Britain. That was when the coaches began to push for Olivia Greaves and routinely featured her on social media. Several parents describe Olivia's mother, Mary Jo, as being the one parent close with Maggie Haney and Vicky Levine. It developed over putting crystals on leotards, but they say that Mary Jo is bold and a former gymnast who coached Olivia through her first go-round in level 8. She allegedly approached Maggie Haney on the competition floor in the middle of a meet. Since that time, she has worked to get her daughter to the top. Many parents noted that Olivia's brother switched high schools to improve his chances at a basketball scholarship. McCusker's leaving was more complicated, and parents allege that this is the time when Haney allegedly and infamously told Riley she would kill herself if she left MG Elite. Parents point out that though it seems transparent and unthinkable to us as adults, McCusker was a teenager who thought that Riker and Dayton would be left without a mother. Another parent who was once close to the coaches described a rude awakening she experienced as an MG Elite parent. I have to tell you, I struggle every day with my role. Early on, my daughter was one of the golden kids, and she was winning. And I would talk to the other parents whose kids were the perennial punching bags. All of the kids are treated harshly, but there are some who are just mocked and ridiculed day after day. And I was led to believe that by the coaches that those girls just weren't cut out for this. They weren't strong enough. They couldn't hack it. And for a time, I believed them. I started to see their kids that way. And then my daughter got injured and things changed. But when you are there, you are one of the special ones, and you believe it. And then you see those who leave, and they are no longer special. But eventually, it got bad enough that I actually pulled her from the gym. Another parent called me incredulously and was like, "What are you doing? Your daughter isn't going to be special anymore." And I thought about it, and eventually I met with Vicky and said that you can coach her, but Maggie can have nothing to do with her, ever. And we were back, and things were stable for a bit until they weren't. And I started looking around. My daughter was injured, and I felt we needed to get accepted into another program, and we had to do it without Maggie knowing so she couldn't badmouth us to the other gym, and we needed to leave on good terms. But one day, Vicky got into it with my daughter to the point of no return. and my daughter told me she never wanted to go back there ever again. And when I met with Vicky to tell her we were done, she told me, good, because gymnastics isn't her thing. And I said, oh no, she isn't quitting gymnastics, she's just quitting MG. And that's when they tried to destroy us. I'll leave you with an essay that one former MG elite gymnast wrote for her high school English class 4 years after leaving the gym. The title, The Abominable Coach. As a gymnast who formerly trained in multiple elite gyms, I met my fair share of mean, nasty, and creepy coaches. They all yelled and screamed and berated my team and me to make us work harder and wince less. However, the worst coach I ever had by far was during my years at MG Elite in Morganville, New Jersey, where I was also homeschooled for over 2 years. This is the same gym that brought Olympic gold and silver medalist Laurie Hernandez to glory in Rio in 2016. Every one of the gymnasts was coached under the watchful eye of Maggie Haney in part. Even if we were not in her group specifically, she would always watch and correct our skills as needed. Her preferred form of correcting us, however, was to march straight up to us, get close enough so that we could see the individual shades of blue in her eyes, and scream what she wanted to say. It was easy to understand why a coach would get frustrated and yell about corrections that she had said hundreds of times. What was not easy to comprehend, however, was why she would scream things at us that had absolutely nothing to do with our skills. Those shouting moments were more directed towards our capacity to think and actually listen to our emotions. Maggie would infect our innocent, happy thoughts about our love for gymnastics with severe negativity. I remember she stood right in front of me one day while we were stretching to prepare for the day's practice. She told me to stand up and look at the rest of the team warming up. So I did. She then said, "What do you notice about these girls?" I replied that I didn't know what she wanted me to say. She informed me that they were all real gymnasts, that they all had perfect form, graceful dance, powerful tumbling, essentially, they had the it factor. She then smiled a smile as cold as ice, looked at me straight in the eyes, and said, "You don't have that it factor." She was implying that I was just a regular gymnast that didn't belong in her program, meant for elite champions. We had several interactions like this, all of which ended with me crying and wishing I hadn't come to practice that day. The most memorable lecture she gave me was when she screamed across the gym that I should quit gymnastics, saying that I wasn't meant for it anyway. It was heartbreaking to finally understand that I had given up my entire social life and a normal childhood for the approval I would never received. Have I mentioned that this all occurred between the time I was just 10 to 12 years old? It puts quite a perspective on the intensity of elite gymnastics coaches. There is, however, a twisted happy ending to my story. Soon enough, justice may be served to Maggie on a gold, silver, or bronze platter. It was recently released that she is under investigation by USA Gymnastics due to written complaints from multiple families. She is being inspected for charges of bullying, verbal, and emotional abuse, and forcing gymnasts to remove their medically assigned boots in order to continue training. Sadly, I can attest that these despicable actions are true, considering most of these things happened to me as well. I remember watching girls take off their boots and being forced to tumble on the floor or flip on the beam. I remember when I was forced to do backward bending skills while my back was still fractured. I remember her overall cruelty towards us gymnasts at certain times. But most of all, I will forever remember her as the single most mean and nasty person I have ever had the unfortunate displeasure to know. As I recorded this video, several sources called me to let me know that Maggie Haney's suspension had been reduced by an arbitration from 8 years to 5, but that she is not able to appeal that further. This source also indicated that Mark Busby told them that USA Gymnastics will be trying to proceed with another hearing to suspend Haney for life. The New York Times did release an article, but it does not mention USA Gymnastics seeking an additional suspension. This article, again by Juliet McCurr, reads, "Suspension reduced for gymnastics coach accused of emotional and physical abuse." An arbitrator hearing an appeal from Maggie Haney, who has coached an Olympian and other top athletes, denied some of the testimony against her was improperly used. A top gymnastics coach of berating and mistreating athletes will be barred from the sport for 5 years instead of 8 after an arbitrator found some of the testimony that led to her suspension should not have been allowed. At 5 years, the penalty imposed on the coach Maggie Haney is still considered the harshest one that USA Gymnastics, the sport's national governing body, has handed down in a case that did not involve sexual abuse. An arbitrator hearing an appeal from Haney upheld the suspension, but ruled that the hearing panel that decided it should not have taken into account the cases of 4 of 11 gymnasts who complained. In those cases, the arbitrator, in a ruling last week that was disclosed Tuesday by Haney's lawyer, found that USA Gymnastics had failed to provide Haney proper notice of the allegations, leaving Haney without the chance to defend herself sufficiently during the hearing held in February and March. Arbitration decisions are usually not released publicly, but Haney's lawyer, Steve Altman, disclosed it, and a USA Gymnastics official acknowledged its veracity. "We certainly hope for better results," Altman said, adding that he and Haney had asked the arbitrator to rescind the suspension fully based on their claim that the hearing was biased and flawed. "They are now considering their legal options," Altman said, because the arbitration decision contains numerous legal and factual flaws and should be overturned. In an emailed statement, Carol Fabricio, a spokeswoman for USA Gymnastics, said Federation officials were reviewing their arbitration's decision and considering how to proceed. Their choices include letting the arbitrator's decision stand, resubmitting the testimony of the 4 gymnasts, and possibly hearing from more witnesses, or negotiating a resolution with Haney with regard to those additional gymnasts. "We believe it is critical to ensure that the experiences of all involved athletes in the Maggie Haney case are fully considered as part of the ultimate resolution of the case," the Federation's statement said. And then it goes on to recount the other allegations. Well, I certainly want to know what you think about this news about the suspension. Do you think USA Gymnastics should and will consider the 4 additional gymnast testimony and potentially others, even who participated in this video but did not actually participate in the arbitration for various reasons? I want to note that I did reach out to Maggie Haney, Vicky, Levine, and Coach Danny for this video. I was then contacted by Lisa Mercurio, who obviously denied all claims against Maggie Haney, denied all statements that would be made in this video. Please note that this is the work of several weeks and months of research and countless documentation and one-on-one interviews. Curious what you know, what you think. Is Maggie being scapegoated by USAG, or is this the beginning of a cultural shift? What about Mary Lee Tracy? What about Kim Zmeskal and Al Fong? If you are new here, please remember, subscribe below, and please let us know if you like this video. Thanks so much. Good night.